All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So, hi, I'm Courtney Vance. I am a senior project manager at CKC Consulting, and I will be leading today's discussion around a book that was published by Courtney Kearney and Chaz Ross Monroe. Let's see if the blur will stop hiding it. It's called CRM or Die. I know many of you probably have the book and have read it. If you have not read it or have not gotten your copy yet, totally fine. You could still follow along and join in the conversation. So let's just start off with some brief introductions. Of course, we'll be discussing the book, but before we get started, we'll go around and I'll call on you based on the order that I see you. And we'll share our name, firm and location, as well as if you have a copy of the book and if you've read it. So again, I'm Courtney Vance. I'm a senior project manager at CKC Consulting. I am in the North Texas region. I do have a book, obviously, and I was lucky to receive it early, being part of the CKC Consulting team. And even, to this day, I'm still referencing it and reading it because it is very helpful. So next on the list, I got one more to add to panelists here. So I am promoting to panelists, just FYI, so that you can participate in the discussion. So next on the list for introductions, I'm going to call on Denise.
Me?
Hi. Yeah. Give your name, firm name, location, and if you own and read the book.
Hi, my name is Denise Yancey, and I'm the database administrator for marketing for Atna Environmental, which is one of a group of companies for the Atna Corporation up in Anchorage, Alaska. And yes, I have my own copy of the book, and I've read it, and it really makes a lot of sense. It puts into words things that I've been thinking of for a long time, but she says it better.
Awesome. Okay, and then next on the list, I have Amber.
Hello, I am Amber Emily, and I work at Cross Anderson Construction Company. We are a GC out of Minneapolis. I do have a book. I have not read it. However, I have kind of skimmed through it and kind of bullet pointed off of it. And as a team, we've talked about different chapters within it. I just haven't had a chance to sit down and actually read it.
Great. Then next on the list, I have Callie.
Hey, my name is Callie. I work for LJA Engineering. I'm the CRM manager in Houston, and I do have the book, and I love it and have read all of it. So it's very, very helpful for us over here.
Excellent. And then next on my list, I have Holly.
Hi, I'm Holly Jasper. I'm with McGough Construction out of St. Paul, Minnesota. I do not have the book, so I have not read it. We are just getting our CRM back up to date. Some people had kind of let it go, and I'm back getting it up or going again. So I'm just joining again, and might need to order that book.
Awesome. And then next I have Kim.
Hi there, I'm Kim Sheldon. I'm a project manager with CKC Consulting. I'm in the North Dallas area, but my joke is the suburb I live in traffic is actually closer to Oklahoma than downtown Dallas, which is technically the suburb of Dallas. But I do have the book, and I would say if you do buy it based on everyone else, you should also buy Post-its because we all seem to have flagged different things as we went. So, they'll bundle it depending on where you buy online. So I am excited to go through this next chapter as having read it before. As Courtney mentioned, we got an advanced view of it as part of the team, but I go back to different chapters and I always learn something each time I go through it. So looking forward to the discussion.
Excellent. Okay, next on my list, I have Megan.
Hello, I'm Megan. I work for Martin Martin, an engineering firm based out of Colorado. However, I am full-time remote in Oklahoma, so we're neighbors, Kim. I do not have the book. I've heard about the book and I'm interested to learn more.
Excellent. Next on my list, I have Nancy.
Hi, I'm Nancy Miller. I work with Amber, Crouse Anderson Construction Company. I also have the book. I have not read it yet, but like Amber said, we do discuss this a lot. So,
And excellent. And last but not least, Stacy.
I'm Stacy Ho. I'm with OTAC. I'm their CRM and market data analyst, and I do have the book, and I have read the book, and I do like the book, and I'm glad that she put it together because it's been very helpful.
Wonderful. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share the questions in the chat. Let me just double check to make sure these are the right questions here. And if you have not read the book, these are the questions that are at the end of the chapter. And we will be discussing these during the call today. All right. So chapter 5 is all about preparation is key. And the first question from the end of the chapter is, have you focused the necessary attention on your firm's internal processes for managing the client life cycle, lead to opportunity to project, and what happens in each step? So have you guys done any of that at your firm?
We've done that, but it's continually changing. As we keep adapting our processes to, the modern day, we're realizing that our processes need to be changed before we can actually decide what the life cycle path is.
That's very true. And, that kind of calls out to a point later in the chapter that says the data is never going to be perfect. And that's kind of why, because it's a moving target, right? Things change, priorities shift, and it makes absolute sense that it's an ongoing process to redefine, how things are operating. Anybody else may have implemented any kind of process mapping of tracking leads through opportunity through project?
Yeah, we're rolling out actually a new, what I'm calling an opportunity lifecycle, ironically, right now, actually. And it's got, I have my graphics team do a really great job sort of highlighting what happens within the system and what happens externally. So for instance, we have checkpoints along the way that we have workflows that either send alerts or notifications to do things outside of the system, like fill out a go-no-go form, things I'd love to do in the system eventually, but don't now. So, so it demonstrates the in the system and out of the system life cycle, and then it demonstrates also where things may come in at different points in the life cycle. So you don't always come in at the earliest lead. Sometimes you come in a little later. Here's what happens when you come in later. That's what that's.
Yeah. Any other comments?
We're kind of coming in at ours in completely the wrong order because we are building and have built and are continuing to, I guess, change our own CRM system. And so now I'm kind of in the process of actually mapping out the process and, the way things are supposed to be. We don't right now have any official processes or any type of guidelines. We just kind of do it. So I'm in that fun stage of like, okay, how do I write this out and what actually are we doing? Because we've got bits and pieces of what different groups do. At least now we have the process for what our marketing staff does, but that's not the whole company. We have to factor in the PMs and everybody else, and it's just it's a lot.
Yeah, I
don't know what's going on.
Even for us, the first step was to define the BD process, like the sales process internally. We call it win map here. There's a map that you follow, all the steps to win a pursuit. And then all I really did was align our system with that, right? Like
Gotcha.
That was the hard part. All I had to do was align how the system works to function to mimic that. That was not as hard.
That's a good way to do it. Yeah, I don't have we have so many different groups that everybody kind of does their own thing. We have at our firm called like states rights, so the different groups kind of lead themselves. So there is, even between us, there's no kind of common way people go about doing stuff, which is what I think I'm going to try to build towards. So that way, when people are using the system, they all have the same process. So I don't know. I don't really know what I'm doing.
Well, in that case, the next question might be pretty helpful to you in building this process out. Does anybody have a change management strategy in place? And just as a refresher, what this talked about in the book was basically who is like, what's your why? Like, what's your sense of urgency? Why are we going through this effort? And who's your team? Who are the thought leaders around this that are helping you shape this process and, basically, help you along the way to drive adoption and figure out what we need to make the system useful. Yeah, any thoughts on that?
Launching from that to what Callie had said, I think when you have different groups that kind of have had their own process and it's probably worked for them, I think if you can align on the why, because you're going to be asking some people to do some additional things they didn't feel they didn't picture doing, so they're going to maybe question, and maybe not, but everybody kind of gets in their rut or in their lane. And so if you can, like some of these points bring out as far as getting the thought leaders together and also just recognizing the why, whether it's marketing needs this data for better proposals or BD needs it to understand a good strategy. How many have we won and what market sector for which owners? And, like the data is where it's there, but you have to be able to analyze it. And so, I think this section kind of speaks in my head when you were talking a moment ago about this could help shore up some of the people, and it's all new and you're gonna have to gather the information and point out what's different, but going it back to the why each time might help the team come together.
Yeah, and maybe it's easier to kind of focus on the why. An example that was given in the book was two different parts of an organization, like, maybe two different practices. They pursued the same work and they didn't know that, they were pursuing the same work within the same company. And, they proposed on it with two different prices. And that for that company was their why, like, oh, that's embarrassing. The client caught it, was like, well, which price should I go with? Because you're the same company. So if any of you have a why on why you were focusing on maintaining and building out your CRM, that would be helpful for discussion. Anybody with a why they want to share?
We have a general sort of why of it's just to make better business decisions. That's on the BD side. And then on the marketing side, it's to elevate the role of the marketer.
Yeah.
Yeah, for us right now, we have defined our big why kind of within marketing. Originally, our CRM started because we needed a database for all of the project info so we could put together SOQs and stuff, and then decided that, oh, hey, this actually could be helpful to everybody in like business development and whatnot. And so our big selling point right now on trying to get PMs to use this stuff is so that way we can bother them less by actually retaining this information in a place that everybody has access to. So that is our current big why, with, I guess, future whys down the line of helping people with business development aside from just marketing and proposals.
I love the no nag why.
It's like one of the biggest things that gets so annoyed. It's like, I just gave that to so-and-so last week. And it's like, well, it disappeared inside of the file. So.
The other way we're starting to try to deal with change management is to step the required fields based on stage or different stages of the project. So to open a lead, you don't need that many fields, but to close a project, you need, more or whatever. And that way we're trying to, get people used to the concept of required fields, but also give them the flexibility to not have to enter in an entire form just to open a single opportunity.
I hate being a nag. It puts me in a bad mood if I have to nag somebody.
So have any of you developed like committees or just groups to help you focus in on your CRM efforts? And if you have, tell us a little bit about what you've done and what kind of roles the people that are in your groups might be performing in their regular jobs outside of the CRM development.
Well, I guess with us, we have a team of us. There's 3-4 of us that work on our CRM database pretty much full time. So we also assign ourselves to different offices and business units or market sectors. And I'm having troubles kind of answering some of these. That's why, I'm trying to think of it, because our whole big why and all that kind of stuff too, I think it's gradually changed over the years, and now people are relying on the data a lot more. So almost every meeting we're seeing widgets in it. People are using reports. We're in the meetings, depending on which one of us is helping that team. So I feel like that's involved over the time, but that's really helped. And then they're constantly looking at it as well. So
that's amazing. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what you want for sure. It's like that snowball effect. You start small, but then just like the accumulation of efforts, it just gets bigger and better. That's great.
It's been great to see in the last couple of years. I think the remote environment helped a little bit too, because that kind of data now they're relying on because it's something that they could get at their fingertips. But it's been over a decade in the making. So it's like, it's like the aha moment finally when people start to get it. And then the data is accurate. But I mean, we're still going back and trying to put stuff in there from 40, 50 years ago, which, you didn't have that much stuff. So, I mean, it's just an ever evolving project.
I've
Takes a
actually been
village.
using the book rules too. The book sort of defines, and I think that she did a presentation too. She talked about like the data consumer, the data editor, the data auditor. Like I've been consistently using those to not only put my committees together, but to talk about who the ultimate, your role is in this system. So you are a data consumer. You don't necessarily need to be an editor, but you are an editor and an auditor or whatever. And people really are sort of gravitating towards the idea that, oh, that makes sense. So that's my role here. Like, I don't necessarily have to be a power user, but I am a consumer.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, well, let's move on to the next question. Are you and your team clear on your why? Why is your firm implementing this change now, and how will it help your organization? We kind of covered this already. So we were talking about our why statements. So we'll just kind of skip over to the next. Is your data in order and prepped prior to your CRM implementation or for future imports to an existing CRM system? So basically this question is getting at data hygiene. Primarily this chapter was talking about implementation, right? So you're starting from scratch, maybe you have data stored somewhere else and you're about to import it into your system. But in the same way, it kind of relates to an existing system as well. If you are planning to do any massive cleanup efforts or, import, maybe you acquired a company and import, this is important to consider, how you're going to bring that data in, making sure that you're not accidentally creating duplicates along the way. Has anybody been involved with that process of either implementation or importing large data sets into your account? And if you want to share how your experience went or some of the things you learned along the way, that would be great too.
I was involved in importing a lot of our information into our CRM. And first, of course, you have to organize the information you have. First, you have to collect it from all the different people who have been hiding it away on their computer all this time. And then each person did it differently. So when you combine it, and you're not even in the CRM yet, you have to figure out some way to get it fairly consistent so that when you do searches later, it'll pop up. So yes, that's very intensive thinking and looking at every dot, every letter, that kind of stuff. But it's really worth it in the end. It's really worth it. And it just by looking at it, you can tell what things stick out and what probably shouldn't be there, what is missing. So you find out things when you're doing all this too. It's not just busy work. You actually learn things.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I had an interesting experience the other day on a client call where, the stage was changing, from a lower level to a closed one within like a short time frame. And just the way that it was happening, it was almost like a mystery. But then we figured out, oh, they're doing that to skip over some required fields so that they can get around it. So when you see gaps in data information, you're like, oh, these fields are blank because they found a loophole. So in that sense, it does kind of teach you stuff. You also learn other bits of information too. All right. So have you reviewed your actions and those for your fellow leaders to ensure that you're supporting effective use of your CRM solution? Does anybody have any comments for this one?
I mean, I don't know. We have a vision, a now Vantage Point system, which if any of you know about the new upgrades there, it's highly integrated with projects. So everything we do has to have some sort of finance discussion because it is so integrated now. So definitely for me, the constant conversation is to make sure that everything that we're doing to use the system aligns with what they need to do in the system. I'm not sure that's true for everyone here, but.
I was going to say somewhat related. When I read this, what I was thinking of is one of my clients, they were really overwhelmed with the amount of fields that had to be entered. And so we looked at those and, do they need to be there? And they kind of, the pendulum swing, there were so many, like, let's just streamline it, which different CRMs can do different things like that. And just working with them over the period of months, we slowly opened some of those fields back up again, because when it came down to the analytics that they wanted to review, that data was in those fields, and that's why they were turned on. But if you're implementing, you're trying to imagine what you might need for the analytics and for the reviews and for the assessments. But even if you've had a system, you might forget the why. You might forget why some of those fields were there. And there are some nuanced ones that seem redundant. And it's like, well, then put a tooltip or do something to make it clear what you're trying to get at and how this field is valuable. And not everything needs to be turned on for every client. There's a sort of a niche environment. But it was interesting here, like, have you reviewed the actions to make sure you're getting effective use? They wanted to streamline entry, but then when it came to the dashboard and widgets, they wanted reported things that we weren't putting in anymore. So it's that kind of looping back over and just assessing. I think that's valuable also.
That was a very valuable process, so they could see their why they need to put it in, because if they don't put it in, it's not going to be there at the end.
Yeah, she actually said in her aha moment, which was fun to see the evolution, because it may not have occurred on our call, but in that moment, she was like, we probably should have started with what I want to get out before I told you to turn these off. And it was, like, okay, but you can turn them back on. And again, we hadn't lost years of data. It was just a little bit of forensic to put back in. But all that said, it's valuable. Those lessons, the learned hard ones, are the ones that stick with you the longest, I think.
It's also cool that most CRMs you can tailor to your company, at least some. So you can get rid of some of those excess fields, and that's great. We have control.
Yeah, excellent point shared. All right. Well, are there any other comments for discussion? We are about 4 minutes out from the end of the call. Yeah, open floor.
We still have difficulties trying to get the construction project managers to even open the program up on their computer screen. They just really are not, they do not believe it will help them. It's just more work. And I try to be really, really nice, and I show them reports. And it's just not getting across.
Are there any meetings where you can share screen and you happen to have it open and you just naturally work within it, or they see it and maybe it's imposing, but
They don't accept the invites.
oh.
So I think it needs to come from higher up than me. That's what I've been told.
Yeah, the culture.
Yeah.
I would agree. Vance probably has input as well, and those on the call. But if the culture, we had a situation where it was a BD focused, and we did have some ops people in there, and the senior person in the room got to the point where he's like, "Great that you found out about that at the Byron Nelson Golf Tournament last weekend. If it's not in this program, we're not talking about it today. We'll talk about it next week." And to get stopped right there, as enthusiastic as BD guy was, sorry, you know. So kind of a couple of
I
those.
also, oh, sorry. I also wanted to say, to piggyback off Amber, I think, even our group of 4 that there are, we meet weekly, which is great. So we kind of discuss a lot of that, and then sitting in on these meetings, the government meeting, the K-12 meetings, stuff like that. I mean, we're sitting there and they don't even realize this is information we should have. So then we're sitting there taking notes, and that's where we're getting a lot of the information. Because I personally think the PMs like getting harassed, or maybe they would do it. But I think sitting in on those meetings is huge, being part of the discussion. So
We have a preliminary approval that has to happen before you can charge to the BD budget. So you can't actually open a budget until you've gone through that preliminary go check. So, I mean, I suppose they can hide their time wherever they want, obviously, like lots of people do, but for some people that will definitely trigger them getting it into the system.
Excellent. Well, this has been a wonderful discussion. Thank you guys for attending, and we'll see you next month. Bye.
Hi, everybody.